Organizations tend to default to time savings when they think about the primary benefit of AI. What have you both discovered as your organization's primary benefit, and why? So let's start maybe with you, Doug.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give kind of two different answers here. Certainly time savings is important so long as you can objectively measure it. And so one of the biggest challenges we see within companies, they get very caught up, and I believe in the innovation for sure, but they get caught up into, we're going to make better decisions. Okay, what is the quantification or value of that better decision as a good example? And some of the just very objective ways that you can kind of look at these things and measure them and to really kind of say, hey, here's a quantifiable outcome or ROI I was able to get off of this is time savings. So I don't want to kind of dismiss that point. But just beyond time savings, when we look at, we kind of look at AI a couple different buckets. One is the pure automation side, the other is the assist side. And that's really where we see the innovation occur at. We are seeing not only just a significant, about an average of 33 to 35% reduction in the speed of an answer or the speed of a task. But more importantly, because that kind of feeds back into the overall model, I won't get into the details of that, but we call that neural knowledge. And so all of a sudden, if you've come up with a better answer and we're able to score that over time, that answer or that task is now available to everybody. That feeds into the model. So these things will give you a substantial improvement into task accuracy, which then increases innovation, it creates creativity, but allows people, and I think a lot of times if you take people away from the mundane tasks, it allows them to kind of put their brain power to those more creative tasks and then use the power of things like generative AI to kind of assist in those endeavors. Just one last point is, through this, if you do fine tuning through this process and you do it properly, we see about a 300% improvement. And this is not our stat, this is just a general industry stat, a 300% improvement in task accuracy by doing fine tuning through this entire process. And so just any model that you put in place is going to run 3x better than any kind of pre-trained model is substantial.
So one of the challenges we saw in the research was that, let's say, executive optimism tends to sometimes have a bit of a disconnect from the way people feel on the ground. How have you thought about that gap? How have you bridged that gap, if you have, in your organizations? So let's start with you, Doug.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the disconnect is massive. I mean, we always kind of look at market studies and stats. 87% of CEOs will tell you that AI is going to be the most transformative application or any solution they can put in for their business. 72%, along with that, 72% of CEOs now are the primary decision maker around AI projects. Yet Google's result shows a 97% failure. 95% of AI projects fail to deliver any ROI whatsoever, right? So there's obviously a massive disconnect between those two things. One of the causes, if you look underneath the covers, companies on average underestimate the cost of AI between 500 to 1,000%. Those are just massive disconnects. And so it's not that the AI fails. I think that people are looking at it very simplistically. Let me just take a pre-trained model, throw it in place, not put the rest of the governance around it that I need to be able to do. The number one cause of AI failures is the underlying data is not there to be able to support it. And so people will take a pre-trained model, throw RAG functions on there, expecting that's going to solve kind of some of the tasking issues that they're seeing. Yeah. While it will reduce hallucinations and it will give up-to-date current knowledge within the company, we have already acknowledged that you have underlying data structure challenges, and then you're just throwing a RAG function out there. And so what we see is companies are not thinking through kind of what it really takes to put these in place, like, again, doing a fine-tuning process with RAG as a good example, will improve the accuracy by 87%. I mean, those are just substantial numbers versus just RAG alone. So if you go just fine-tuning itself, you're already at 81%. If you add RAG on top of that, then you're another 5 to 6 points above that. And so it's kind of these hybrid models, putting them in place. And then the other big challenge that we see is when a project fails, and you had a lot of really good stats on there, kind of who's accountable for all these different things, who's accountable for something fails. And so some of the lessons that I think a lot of CIOs learned during large-scale ERP implementations, which is it can't just sit in any one box, right? It can't just sit with a CIO or the CFO or anybody else. It really takes the entire business coming together. I think it's the same disciplines that we need to kind of put back with deploying AI. It is a very complex technology. It is a transformative solution, and especially if it's going to impact the way that your business applications or operations are running. Just another scary stat that's kind of going out there right now is last year we had about 700 documented lawsuits against companies for misuse of AI. That'll be 2,000 by the end of this year. Last year we had 12% of Fortune 500 companies cite material weaknesses or have to state material weaknesses as a result of AI. That goes up to 72% this year.
We've seen that a small percentage of the organizations consider themselves highly transformed, while others believe they're sort of in the early stages. The organizations that have found success share a lot of these traits that I talked about a moment ago. And so I think it's important for us to maybe talk about the first item, which is about having a clear strategy and a roadmap.
There's a balance there for sure. I think we're a little bit advantaged because we're working so closely with many, many different large companies on implementing their AI strategies and kind of building their models out and doing their automation. And so a lot of the good ideas come from them. And we've got a tremendous engineering side of the house, which they have full reign because they're kind of their own separate siloed environment outside of the primary organization anyways. And their job is just that, is to be creative and be innovative and work very closely with our different customers. And as their customers, a lot of times they come up with some phenomenal ideas of how to apply this. We have this very specific problem, this is a problem, how do we apply it? And so the way that we look at this is kind of this almost like an incubation labs within our own development community. And then we'll look at it within our IT and back-end corporate, and then we'll look at it the rest of larger Sutherland, which is a much more lockdown environment. So there is a trickle-down effect. I fully agree with the security and compliance risk there. I mean, we're providing services and process optimizations for very large companies, and so that's a lockdown environment. But the innovation is what's really kind of key. But more importantly from that, it's the biggest value is just not, hey, what is the coolest AI model? It's how am I going to apply it to a very specific set of business problems, and what outcome is that going to be able to drive? And so that business language that comes all the way through of we were able to put this into XYZ company, and we're able to drive this very specific outcomes, then that lets us look at industries differently, look at some of our internal processes differently.
Awesome. Okay, what about the second point, integrating AI into company culture? Doug, do you have a point of view on this?
Yeah, so we started up an AI Academy. And while I think kind of every company is doing that, and we kind of went the intent of like, hey, you have to kind of do this. A couple interesting things came out. Number one is we very much tied training and certifications to companies that you can work on projects that you can work on, and then your own bonus structure. And that had a massive effect where it wasn't somebody who's just kind of reading the screen and trying to pass a test and saying, hey, I took this kind of AI proficiency test. They're actually doing deep certifications with Google's and others. And then they get to work on, hey, I want to work on this kind of really cool project over here at Spotify as a good example. Fantastic, you kind of get the first right. So that kind of creates an AI culture. Number two is we do a tremendous amount of AI assist capabilities. And a lot of the roles, they get bonus structures. And so because you're improving their efficiency at the end of the day, they are massively embracing AI, whereas they're not fighting it. And the second part is we do a lot of human in the loop, because that's how we do reinforcement learning on the back-end models. And so they feel like it's part of the process versus, hey, I'm just kind of forcing you and trying to automate you out of the role. So because they're more efficient, they're actually getting paid more money. And for every single, the interesting stat that we came to be is, as we're kind of implementing AI across companies, and for every single 1 point that we saw in CSAT improvement, we saw 2 points improvement in employee satisfaction, because the efficiencies are coming for them.
How do you translate that into training? Is that then become something that's discipline specific? Like, hey, finance team, here's now how you're going to be able to have these specific jobs to be done, like really accelerated, same for marketing, same for sales? Or are you focused on like horizontal value for the whole company?
Finance should be the one that's actually bringing you in and saying, hey, please automate this process, right? So that is the training by itself, because they're the ones kind of doing that innovation by and of itself. But number two, if I walk into a company and I want to look at a transformed company versus a non-transformed company, it's exactly what he just said. Is they're running a bunch of different MCP endpoints, and they're doing what's called inline AI. So it's a critical component of the workflow or the process itself versus what we call clunky AI, which is just, hey, I've deployed a tool and I'm copying and pasting from this tool to this tool, and I'm getting the outputs and I have to go put it in. That leads to AI fatigue. So there's a very clear difference in the way that companies are approaching these. The true transformative ones are doing exactly what he just walked you through. Hey, we're doing all this interface and integrations at the core level and making it a critical part of the process.
What do you think is the ultimate strategic prize? When we come out the other end of this in days, weeks, months, it's all happening so fast. What do you think is the big prize that organizations are looking for, are going to be able to achieve, Mike?
It's very difficult, but once you get that 5%, the speed of movement and the speed of transformation those companies undergo is amazing. Yeah. And so what we've seen is when the companies have properly adopted it, they rise quickly to the number one position within their markets, and everybody else is trying to catch up at that point. And they have about a 2-year time advantage window.